So my name is Alicia Evangelista, and I'm in Boston, in the United States. And I work for an organization called Swissnex Boston, which is the first science and tech diplomacy consulate in the world. And I work on behalf of the country of Switzerland. And our mission, our mantra is to try and connect tech ecosystems between Switzerland and other hubs around the world, to make meaningful interchange of knowledge, of business resources, and talent. And so I specifically work as the head of innovation, which means that I help anywhere from startups to large companies make connections that are going to make their business more interesting, more global, and hopefully more robust. And so I think you asked about hobbies. I'd say my day is entirely immersed in tech. I spend a lot of time across many different industries. My background is in the life sciences. So when I have free time, I try to be as tech-free as possible, because I think it gives perspective. So I like to do a lot of outdoor activities, hiking, running, anything to do with gardening, etc. So I try and take a step back from all the technology on the weekends, and then go back to it with full passion on Mondays.
Awesome. That's super awesome, actually. And who is a role model?
A role model. So a lot of people. So I think it's really important to kind of draw inspiration from a lot of different sources. So there's obviously a lot of people in the public sphere who you can draw inspiration from. For me, one of those people is, for example, Michelle Obama. I think she's an amazing woman who's overcome a lot of potentially difficult circumstances to still thrive and bring a message and to try and improve society. But more personally, I have, for example, my PhD mentor, Richard Cohen, is just this amazing man who, in addition to being a fantastic scientist, when he retired, became a professional photographer. So I had a lot of different passions, or friends who I've gone through all of my training, my work with.
Interesting. Really interesting. So, would you like to elaborate more on your journey? Like, what has been your educational, journey, and then once you graduated, how you actually jumped from life sciences to, to dealing with the companies, tech companies. Yeah, tell us more about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I probably started out on a very similar path to most anyone, women or men, who are interested in tech. So I went and got an engineering degree in undergrad, and I studied the biomedical engineering field. And I found I really liked biology more than I liked the engineering. So I ended up doing a PhD in the biological sciences. And while I was there, I realized that I didn't want to be in a lab for the rest of my life. I wanted to do something more translational. But for anyone who's ever worked in a lab setting, there's a very narrow pathway that you're expected to follow, and that is to go into academia. And of course, as most people who have gotten a PhD, particularly in the biological sciences, know, there's very limited space for that. And so you have to be a little adventurous to find another pathway. And for me, that was thinking about, how do you actually get things, inventions, ideas, materials out of the lab and into society? And so I actually, ironically, did a postdoc to figure this out. I went to the National Institutes of Health, and on the side, I did some training in technology transfer and in material transfer and legalities. And then I ended up transitioning into a role where I was managing the portfolios, the patent portfolios of the NIAID researchers who were working on biosafety level 4, like coronavirus type things, and trying to figure out a way to get those into industry. After that, I ended up working for a consulting firm that did tech scouting. So I was looking for technology, existing technologies and ideas that could solve problems for Fortune 500 companies across all different industries. I ended up working with NASA for a while as a consultant. And then after that, I wanted to try something new. So I thought, why not try government again? And so now I'm back working for a government at Swissnex. So it's been a kind of a full circle, but it never has there been a straight line to my career. It's always just been trying something, figuring out what I like, what I don't like, and then finding a way to pursue those interests.
That's true. It's like, your career is never a linear path. It's always, a haphazard way, and you need to figure out different routes to get what you want in your career
Yep,
life. So
exactly.
that's awesome, actually. So, what are some of the things, the difficult times and the obstacles you faced throughout this journey? I must say it must be many. So, would you like to talk about it?
Yeah, it's interesting because sometimes when I look back, I realize that there were more obstacles than I realized at the time. But sometimes I think it could be helpful to be a little bit naive about the challenges you're facing and just assume that you can do whatever you want to do and just kind of go for it. But I think one of the biggest things that I maybe already touched on a little bit is the fact that when you start a journey in particular type of training, there's an expectation that you're going to do something specific with your life.
Mm-hmm,
And when you go into a PhD route, particularly, it is that in that intention that you will continue to go the academic route.
mm-hmm,
And I was told I was fortunate to have a very great PhD mentor, Richard Cohen, who I mentioned before, and he was open to anything. He had
mm-hmm,
had students that had gone into a lot of different fields, but his experience was still academia.
mm-hmm,
And so I had hoped that when I went to get a postdoc, that there might be a little bit more perspective. And I was actually told by many people along the way that not going into a professorship route was throwing away my training and my talent, and that I didn't deserve to be in a PhD program if I didn't want to continue teaching.
mm-hmm.
And so it's really hard to get past that. And particularly when so much of training is based on writing grants and having in those grants saying, I want to be a professor, I
Mhm,
couldn't say that honestly. I already knew I didn't want to be.
mhm,
So it was a little bit of a fight to try and find role models, so to try and find mentors who would take me on, who understood the journey I was going through, and were
mhm,
not particularly judgmental about what I wanted to do with my life because they had also faced that.
mhm.
Um, there's also, of course, there's always being a woman in science. It's always difficult to be that. But I
True.
found that, again, in the biological sciences, there's a lot of us.
Mhm,
So it was very easy to find peers who could kind of talk through some of the problems and sort of co-mentor each other. But I don't want to downplay the fact that it is still very difficult to be a woman or a minority in higher academic settings.
that's true. In this world, like if you are in a field where people expect you to be something, to and adopt a particular path, and if you're not, adopting that common path that people are want you to do, or to get hold of, then they kind of stereotype you, or they expect,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's a bit a messy world, actually, but that's a great thing that you overcame those times, and now you are here, quite successful. So that's awesome. So what are some of the key achievements have you have achieved during this journey of yours?
Yeah, I think personally, I've found what drives me.
Mm-hmm,
So, it's you have to think about your career as fulfilling not just a financial need or just way to spend your time during the day. It's about figuring out what makes you want to get up and go to work or start your company or whatever it might be.
mm-hmm,
And that was a big question for me for a while because again, I felt like I didn't really have a path I was following. I had certain steps that you could take and they would open doors, but I wasn't sure what those doors would be. So, for me personally, an achievement is just finding a place where I feel comfortable and where I feel like I'm leveraging my talents. But, more to the point with the actual work that I've done, I've made a lot of connections between people, and that's something I really enjoy doing. So whether it's a company that had a problem they haven't been able to solve for years, and then I can come in with a sort of outsider's perspective and say, well, have you thought about X, Y, and Z? And here are some people who can help you think about that. And if I alleviate any of the difficulties that that company is having, that's a
mm-hmm,
victory for me. Or even more recently, I've been working with startups a lot in my current role,
mm-hmm.
and they're very talented people. Incredibly motivated, incredibly insightful, but you only know so much. And so my role has been to help them enter the United States, find partnerships here, think about things. And I've had successes anywhere from a company finding out that the US is not the correct market for them, and doing that very quickly and pivoting to think about something else that's more satisfying or productive for them, to
Mm-hmm.
having companies enter into partnerships with US organizations and begin their journey and expand beyond Switzerland. And that's really exciting to actually have an active part in their growth.
That's true. That's true. And kudos to that, actually. Based on your experience and your journey, what is one piece of advice would you like to give to our, budding female founders, engineers to, follow their dreams or just to start a, startup or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, more power to you. Take whatever advantages, take whatever talents you have and leverage them. But remember that there is no right or wrong pathway. Everyone has to find the route that is going to bring you success and happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to fail a ton along the way, and that's
Mm-hmm.
completely expected. Don't be afraid of that. Don't be afraid to share your experience when you do succeed and to pay that information forward to other girls or even young boys who are trying to figure out what they want to be and what
Mm-hmm.
they want to do. And also know that there are ways, big and small, to push the boundaries of what's possible today. I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
work that I'm doing is not an overwhelmingly huge initiative. It's not something that I think people would have been fighting for 50 years ago, but there were steps that were made along the way, each individual contribution to the ability of women to get ahead in sciences,
Mm-hmm.
the ability for there to be connections between people. Those were small steps that were allowed me to do what I do today. So there are small steps that people are going to take today and tomorrow that are going to allow the as yet unborn children to do amazing things in 50 years. So take those opportunities to expand those boundaries, find something that brings you meaning, find happiness, and then step back and enjoy it. And that's
Wow.
the best I can say.
Wow, amazing, amazing. So you talked about you have worked with the NASA as a consultant. So would you like to shed some light on the kind of work you have done? Because a lot of people dream of, working with NASA. So yeah, that'll be great.
Yeah, NASA's the best. So I want to be clear. I was working for a consulting organization that was contracted with NASA. So I didn't actually work directly for them.
Mm-hmm.
But NASA and some of the other US government institutions, and also around the world, different government organizations are starting to look outside of their own workforce to try and find connections that they can make to bring research forward faster.
Mm-hmm.
And NASA in particular has a Center of Excellence in Collaborative Innovation where they are
Mm-hmm.
engaging with crowds.
Mm-hmm.
They're engaging with institutions, with inventors, et cetera, to try and put NASA's challenges out there for the world and have responses brought in. So
Mm-hmm.
even I was working for them specifically looking for company partners that could answer very specific challenges they were having around space travel, things as mundane as doing laundry in space, propulsion systems, radiation hardening, you name it. They have a lot of issues they need to face before they can go to Mars. But even without having that formal relationship, there are a number of challenges that NASA runs that are open to the public. And anyone can go check out those challenges and apply for them and submit their ideas. And then all of a sudden they're working with NASA. So
That's true.
it's a great open environment. I'd highly recommend anyone who's interested in almost any industry to see what the open challenges are right now.
Well, I have done that. I have gone through their website and, I've seen the challenge and submitted my ideas. So, yeah, I truly, truly, kind of admire your work. So, what is one thing that you really want to change in this world and why?
Hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of things I think, but
Okay,
specifically,
let us know a lot of things then.
well, I think specifically in the area of tech or even in just career
Mhm.
progression, I really wish there was more access. So I
Mhm.
think a lot of us, it keeps coming back to the same theme. A lot of us only know certain career pathways, and we can't
Mhm.
imagine that there are different things that we could do with our lives, or we can't imagine how we would get into things like entrepreneurship or starting our own business. There's this feeling of, because I can't see anyone in my community or in my network doing that, I can't do it. And I
Mhm.
just wish we could have more initiatives like what you're doing here, where you're talking to people who have taken different pathways, who have faced failures and successes, and who can now act as role models for others who are trying to find their path. So
Mhm.
I guess it comes down to having more open networks for young people who want to explore different pathways, having a less judgmental career mentorship network starting as young as high school, and then having more people who are willing to share their experiences, both good and bad, so that there's a more informed generation of people who are looking for careers.
That's a very wise advice, actually, and I totally agree with you that we need to be more collaborative and more open, towards society, towards people, and be more open to taking those uncommon paths which are not maybe not laid by people yet, and we might just be the first pioneer to lay down those paths. So that's
Exactly.
amazing. You also talked about at your company, you help tech companies to get advise them for establishing themselves in US. So how's that process? Let's say if there is a company outside of US who wants to come into US and explore the market and get established. So how does the company actually help?
Yeah. So I'm working with Swiss companies specifically, and Switzerland has an incredible support network for entrepreneurs, from government-funded mentorship to accelerator programs, et cetera. And so when I'm working with a company, it's usually because they've come through some accelerator incubator program in Switzerland and then have been referred to me. The types of stuff that they're looking to find out, always, what should our messaging be? Does our product fit a need that is occurring in the US, and how do we approach that need? How do we incorporate a business in the US? Who do we need to talk to? What things are we not thinking about that we absolutely need to be thinking about? And so I spend a lot of time talking to experts in the US about how they've done their process, or lawyers about how they would go about the process of setting up a US entity. And I connect directly those experts with the startups, because I don't want to pretend to know it all. I don't. I haven't built my own business, so I don't want to go there. But what I will say is, beyond Switzerland, at least in Boston, and I know in a lot of other technology hubs throughout the world, not just the United States, there are a number of technology consulates from different countries. So I know that my colleagues in Boston from the Netherlands, from Japan, from Singapore, from all over the world, are doing something very similar to what I'm doing. And there are always programs that are based in the locations that are looking to pull companies in from other locations too. So again, in Boston, there's an organization called Moiti, which is helping international startups come into the US. Or there's another one called Softland Partners, where it's a consortium of service providers. So I think the takeaway message is, no matter what country you're from and no matter where you're trying to go, there is a support network out there. You just need to find it. So find one person, one government organization in the location where you're going, and ask for help, because they will point you to the right person.
Awesome. It's a very great advice, and thanks a lot for sharing with us. Yeah, I think that's it from our side. I really appreciate your time, and thanks a lot for sharing your journey.